this, the first notes of September hit. Instantly, the whole room is alive. Feet start moving, faces light up, and for a few minutes, every worry disappears. Or maybe it's Shining Star blasting through the speakers, horns triumphant, vocals soaring, and that unstoppable groove reminding you that you can't help but feel invincible. Behind those timeless hits, behind the glittering stages and sold-out arenas, lies a story filled with dreams, sacrifices, heartbreaks, and triumphs. This is not just the tale of a band. This is the story of a movement, of visionaries who fused jazz, funk, R&B, gospel, and cosmic spirituality into a sound the world had never heard before. A sound that healed, inspired, and changed lives. Today, we dive deep into the saga of Earth, Wind, and Fire, from their humble beginnings in the late 1960s, to the staggering highs of superstardom, to the quiet tragedies and enduring legacy that echo into 2025. Stick with us, because some of these revelations will leave you stunned. Maurice White was the visionary, the dreamer, the man who believed music could be more than entertainment. Born on December 19, 1941, in Memphis, Tennessee, Maurice grew up surrounded by gospel and blues. But destiny would call him north to Chicago. At the Chicago Conservatory of Music, he trained formally, but it was at Chess Records where he truly sharpened his craft. As a session drummer, he backed legends like Etta James, Muddy Waters, and Fontella Bass. It was here that Maurice absorbed sounds from everywhere: jazz improvisation, gospel harmonies, African rhythms, funk grooves, and even mystical philosophy. This melting pot of influences became the seed for something revolutionary. In 1969, Maurice formed his first group, the Salty Peppers. The lineup included local musicians like Sherry Scott, Wade Flemons, and Don Whitehead. They released a few singles, but sales were dismal. Still, Maurice saw beyond failure. Guided by his Sagittarius zodiac sign, he renamed the band Earth, Wind, and Fire, aligning it with the elements earth, air, and fire. Notice anything missing? Water. Maurice explained that water wasn't part of his sign, so instead, he created a group rooted in rhythm, energy, and spiritual fire. This wasn't just a band. Maurice envisioned a movement, one that fused ancient African instruments like the kalimba, Egyptian symbolism, and themes of unity and empowerment into their sound. A movement that would heal a world torn by war, civil rights struggles, and economic uncertainty. But the path to greatness was far from easy. The early years were brutal. The first Earth, Wind, and Fire albums released under Warner Brothers were bold, genre-defying experiments, fusing jazz, rock, and R&B in ways the mainstream wasn't ready to embrace. Critics admired the ambition, but record sales lagged. Crowds were small, promoters were hesitant, and frequent lineup changes shook the band's stability. Original members like vocalist Sherry Scott and guitarist Michael Beale departed, leaving Maurice White questioning whether his vision could survive. Managers came and went, and the financial strain grew so heavy that at times the dream seemed on the verge of collapse. But Maurice refused to give up. In 1970, he turned to family, recruiting his younger brother Verdine White, a teenage bass prodigy with both classical training and an innate sense of groove. Verdine's dynamic stage presence and unshakable loyalty gave the group a new backbone. Soon after, the lineup expanded with a fresh wave of talent. Philip Bailey, whose falsetto would become one of the most recognizable voices in music, Ralph Johnson, a rock-solid drummer whose precision anchored the band's rhythm section, and Larry Dunn, a teenage keyboard wizard who added both sophistication and funk to their sound. With these additions, Maurice's vision began to crystallize. A major turning point came in 1972, when Earth, Wind, and Fire signed with Columbia Records. Unlike Warner Brothers, Columbia believed in their potential and gave them the support they needed to grow. Under Columbia, Maurice finally had the resources to expand the band's sound, blending lush horn sections, African-inspired percussion, and spiritual lyrics with a commercial sensibility. The transformation from an experimental act to a powerhouse had begun. Their first Columbia releases hinted at greatness, but it was Head to the Sky, 1973, that announced Earth, Wind, and Fire as something different. The album's mix of cosmic themes and uplifting grooves connected with a growing audience. From there, each record became a step toward the superstardom that awaited. The trials of the early years, the failed albums, the departures, the financial stress, became the foundation of their resilience. Instead of breaking them, those struggles forged the unity and determination that would carry them into history as one of the most visionary bands of all time. From 1973 to 1983, Earth, Wind, and Fire exploded into global superstardom, becoming one of the most dynamic and influential bands of the 20th century. Their albums during this period weren't just successful, they became cultural milestones. Head to the Sky, 1973, marked the blossoming of Maurice White's visionary fusion of soul, jazz, and spirituality. That's the Way of the World, 1975, elevated them to household name status, with its title track and the incandescent Shining Star embodying hope and self-belief. The same year, their live album Gratitude captured their unmatched stage energy and became one of the most celebrated live recordings of the decade. By the time they released All in All, 1977, with its dazzling blend of funk, Afrocentric rhythms, and cosmic themes, the band was at the peak of its creative powers. Their string of hits, Shining Star, Fantasy, Reasons, Boogie Wonderland, Let's Groove, and of course, the timeless September, transformed them into legends. But Earth, Wind and Fire was never just about songs, built entire worlds around their music. Their concerts became spectacles of sound and vision, massive pyramid stage designs, Egyptian-inspired iconography, levitating illusions crafted with magician Doug Henning, glittering costumes, and choreography that electrified arenas. Audiences didn't just attend shows. They participated in what felt like cosmic rituals of joy, designed to uplift the spirit. Behind the shine, however, was struggle. The band endured grueling touring schedules that tested their health and personal lives. Racism within the music industry meant radio stations were often reluctant to embrace their genre-defying mix of R&B, funk, jazz, gospel, and rock, and the sacrifices were immense. Time spent away from loved ones, the pressures of fame, and the physical toll of living constantly on the road. Yet, driven by Maurice White's vision of using music as a force for positivity and unity, they pressed forward. Their 1975 breakthrough single Shining Star became a #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100, winning them a Grammy and securing their place in history. Over the next decade, Earth, Wind and Fire redefined what a band could be. Not just musicians, but cultural architects who bridged genres, generations, and even philosophies. Philip Bailey's falsetto became Earth, Wind, and Fire's celestial trademark. Raised in Denver, Philip was deeply influenced by gospel, jazz, and soul. He joined in 1972, and songs like Reasons, Fantasy, and Devotion showcased his spiritual edge. Offstage, Philip released gospel and jazz albums, staying true to his faith. Even as Maurice stepped back in the 1990s, Philip carried the band's vocal legacy. In 2025, at 74, his falsetto still lifts audiences to the heavens. Verdine White, with his funky bass lines and flamboyant stage presence, was the pulse of the band. Inspired by Miles Davis and trained by Chicago symphony musicians, Verdine gave Earth, Wind, and Fire its groove. Beyond music, he co-founded the Verdine White Foundation to support young musicians. In 2025, at 73, he still tours, his energy undimmed. In fact, his single Superman, released in honor of Maurice, marked a touching tribute to his brother's legacy. Ralph Johnson, often overlooked, provided percussion that anchored the band's sound. He joined in 1971 and gave the group its rhythmic spine. Outside of music, Ralph mastered martial arts, scuba diving, and aviation. In 2019, he released a solo project, Coast to Coast. In 2025, at 73, he remains the steady heartbeat behind the fire. Larry Dunn, joining at just 19, came Earth, Wind, and Fire's musical director and keyboard wizard. He co-wrote Shining Star and helped shape their sound with lush chord progressions and arrangements. Though he left in 1983, he returned for select projects and continued producing for other artists. His humility masked his genius, but insiders know Larry was one of the band's silent architects. Jessica Cleaves, who joined in 1971, contributed to Head to the Sky. Her soulful, ethereal voice was crucial in the band's early years, but creative tensions led her to leave. She later joined Parliament Funkadelic, diving deep into psychedelic funk. Sadly, Jessica passed away in 2014 at 65 after complications from a stroke. Her legacy lives on in the cosmic layers of EWF sound. Andrew Woolfolk's sax solos gave hits like September and Boogie Wonderland their edge. Joining in 1973, he stayed with the group for nearly 2 decades. He also collaborated with Phil Collins and others. In 2022, Andrew passed away at 71 after battling illness. His sound remains immortal every time a saxophone wails through an EWF track. Roland Bautista brought depth with his guitar, joining during lineup shifts in the early 70s and again in the 80s. Beyond EWF, he recorded solo albums and worked with artists from George Duke to the Crusaders. In 2012, Roland passed away at just 60. Quiet and humble, his guitar spoke louder than words. By the late 1980s, the pressures caught up. Internal tensions, shifting music trends, and the toll of constant touring led to a temporary disbanding in 1983. Yet, even when the fire dimmed, it never died. Maurice continued producing, Philip pursued solo work, and the legacy endured. But the greatest test came in the 1990s. Maurice White, the visionary himself, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Quiet at first, he revealed his illness publicly in 2000. Forced to stop touring in 1994, Maurice never stopped guiding the band creatively. He kept writing, producing, and inspiring, even as his body weakened. His struggle humanized the cosmic image of EWF, showing fans that vulnerability could be turned into strength. On February 4, 2016, Maurice White passed away peacefully at 74. Tributes poured in from around the world, from Stevie Wonder to Eric Clapton. The world mourned not just a musician, but a spiritual architect of modern music. Fast forward to August 2025. Earth, Wind and Fire is still touring. Verdine White, Philip Bailey, and Ralph Johnson continue to bring the fire to new generations. Just this summer, they surprised fans at Lollapalooza with Sabrina Carpenter, performing September to a roaring crowd, proving their sound is timeless. Meanwhile, Questlove's much-anticipated documentary on Earth, Wind and Fire is set to release later this year, diving even deeper into their story, ensuring their legacy is passed on to future generations. With over 90 million albums sold, 6 Grammys for American Music Awards, and inductions into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and the Vocal Group Hall of Fame, Earth, Wind and Fire's place in history is secure. But beyond numbers, their greatest achievement is emotional, lifting spirits, inspiring unity, and creating songs that soundtrack the best moments of our lives. Earth, Wind and Fire's journey is more than music. It's about vision, resilience, and family. When Maurice White first imagined the group, his goal wasn't just to form a band. It was to create a collective that could uplift humanity. He believed music carried spiritual power, and he infused every album with that belief. The kalimba, his signature African thumb piano, wasn't just an instrument. It symbolized a connection to ancestral roots and universal harmony. Their sound was unlike anything else in the 1970s. It blended African rhythms, jazz improvisation, gospel harmonies, R&B grooves, and rock energy, and somehow made it feel seamless. Philip Bailey's soaring falsetto became the celestial counterpoint to Morris's earthy baritone, while Verdine White's bass lines pulsed with kinetic joy. Ralph Johnson's grounding percussion kept everything anchored, giving their music both cosmic scale and irresistible danceability. The band also became pioneers in live performance. Their tours were designed like spiritual journeys, with Egyptian pyramids, mystic symbols, and illusions of levitation. Maurice worked with magicians Doug Henning and David Copperfield to stage effects that made concerts feel otherworldly. Fans didn't just attend shows, they were swept into an experience where music, theater, and mysticism collided. But beyond the spectacle, Earth, Wind and Fire carried a message. Their lyrics championed love, unity, and perseverance at a time when America was struggling with racial tension, economic shifts, and social change. Songs like Keep Your Head to the Sky, Shining Star, and That's the Way of the World were more than hits. They became anthems of hope. Of course, their journey was also marked by loss. Maurice White passed in 2016, followed by key members Andrew Woolfolk, Fred White, Roland Bautista, and Jessica Cleaves. Yet the spirit of the band lives on in every performance. As Verdine White reflected in 2025, we play for those we've lost, keeping their spirit in every note. That's the true magic of Earth, Wind, and Fire. They weren't just a band. They were, and still are, a movement. A reminder that even in turbulent times, we can dance, we can dream, and we can rise together. So the next time you hear that immortal opening line, do you remember? You're not just recalling a song. You're remembering a story of vision, sacrifice, triumph, and a fire that still burns bright today. Were you surprised to learn about the hidden struggles of Earth, Wind, and Fire? Did you know so many original members had passed on? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe their legacy should never fade, hit like, share this video, and keep the fire alive. Because as long as September plays, Earth, Wind, and Fire will never truly be gone.